If you've ever purchased the same stock multiple times at different prices, you've probably heard the term dollar cost average. Dollar cost average is just a fancy way to say weighted average, but how would you calculate something like that in Excel? If you've ever purchased the same stock multiple times at different prices, you've probably heard the term dollar cost average. Dollar cost average is just a fancy way to say weighted average, but how would you calculate that in Excel? Unfortunately, unlike Google Sheets, which does have a dedicated average weight function, Excel does not. So let's take a look at an example of how to calculate this with a few extra steps in Excel. Say, for example, you bought the following amount of shares at the following prices. You might do some quick math in your head, and we could even do an Excel formula here, just average, and say, well, it looks like I bought those shares at an average of $15 each. However, using the dollar cost average method or the weighted average method, you have to factor in the number of shares that you bought at each price. To do this, we need to get the total cost of each batch of these shares and then add up those totals to get the total amount of dollars that we spent on these shares, along with the total number of shares purchased. Now, to get the weighted average, we take the total amount of dollars spent on these shares divided by the shares purchased, and we can see that the dollar cost average was in fact $13.75. So this is a relatively straightforward method to calculate the DCA in Excel, but just for fun and to show how to do something like this with a little bit less intermediate steps, let's use another function called SUMPRODUCT. And then we'll take it a step further and use Excel's new LAMBDA function to create a dollar cost average function that we can use to calculate this DCA anytime in this worksheet. So in this new example, we have a little bit more precise numbers here, not as round as the previous example, so can't do this with math in our head. First, we're just going to get the totals here just to show how this math is going to work out, just like we did in the previous example. And then we're going to get a totals with SUMPRODUCT here. SUMPRODUCT. SUMPRODUCT is a great function in Excel. What it does is it takes as many arrays as you want to do some more complex stuff, but for simple purposes, taking two arrays and inputting those into SUMPRODUCT, it will take each one of the lines in those two arrays, multiply them together, and then add them together. So we can see that SUMPRODUCT does the same thing as each one of these total lines adding up together there to get our 2,812.80 cents. So to get a dollar cost average function, all in one function here, we're going to use that SUMPRODUCT. We're going to take our shares and our price. Doesn't matter which order we input those. Either is fine. And we're going to just divide it by the sum of shares. Really not too complex there. Pretty straightforward. So our dollar cost average in this instance is $12.23. Now to take this a step further and use the new LAMBDA function in Excel, we will take our SUMPRODUCT and sum function here that we just used. We're going to call this DCA with LAMBDA. And we are going to paste our SUMPRODUCT formula in here. We're going to wrap that all in LAMBDA. I'm going to close my parentheses back here. And we are going to give LAMBDA two parameters for this calculation. It's going to be our share list, or we'll call it the quantity range, and then the price range here. So we're going to do exactly that. Quantity range and price range. And what we're going to do in our formula here is we're going to replace our cell references with these parameters. So our blue section here of shares is going to be replaced with quantity range. You can see that pops up as a little helper in our LAMBDA function. And the same here, quantity range. And then we're going to replace this with the price range. And now if you just hit enter here, you're going to get an error because Lambda doesn't know what our input is. So to use this without naming it, we right after the Lambda function, you open up another set of parentheses. This is just unique to Lambda. This doesn't work with any other function. And you're going to point your two parameters in those order, first quantity range and then price range, right at the end, and then close the parentheses. And that's going to work just the same as that dollar cost average there. So to really make this useful, especially in a workbook where you might be doing this often, and you just don't want to write a formula this long, although it's not too long, if you're doing it often, you might want to name this so that you can use this formula wherever you want. We are going to get a new column in here. We're going to call this dollar cost average with the dollar cost average function. So to get this named, we're going to go to Formulas in Name Manager. We're going to insert a new name. We're going to call this just DCA. You can get a description in here. This is the description of the formula. And then we're going to paste in our Lambda function that we just created. We're not going to paste in the parameters there at the end, because now with our new function, our parameters go right in the function. So if we go in and type DCA, you can see there's our new function and the description. This is the description of the formula. Very helpful if you are creating a very complex function. And there are our two inputs, quantity range and price range. And just like that, we have one function that's a little bit shorter than the sum product and sum function there. And what's really nice is you can just use it throughout the entire workbook and kind of clean up some calculations and maybe move around a little bit faster. Hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new. Please feel free to leave a comment, like, and subscribe for future videos.